Hey guys, tonight we are wandering into a scene that smells faintly of old iron, warm rice porridge, and wood smoke. It is dawn, but not the soft pastel dawn of a spa retreat. This is the faint gray light leaking into a samurai barracks. You hear the shuffle of straw sandals on creaking wooden floors, the low coughs of men waking after another night of restless sleep, and the slow rising clatter of armor being nudged back into readiness. The air is cool, damp from morning mist, and heavy with the weight of expectation. You are here, standing in the middle of it all, blinking the sleep from your eyes. Around you, helmets, kabuto as they're called, rest in tidy rows, waiting to be polished until they shine enough to impress commanders who might never even notice. That is your fate this morning. You are not rushing into glorious battle, nor carving your name into history, but instead facing the slow, stubborn task of making iron gleam. The irony is delicious, isn't it? All those hours training with swords, and here you are, basically doing housework with extra steps. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough to type, post your location and the time right now in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch beside your bedding mat, fingers stiff from the chill, and you hear the cook's pot lid clatter somewhere beyond the sliding doors. Rice porridge simmers with a thin smell of millet, and a pot of miso soup bubbles lazily. No one feasts in the barracks. This is a breakfast designed to keep you awake, not thrilled. You chew quietly, half thinking about the day ahead, and the moment you swallow the last bite, you know what comes next. The helmets wait, heavy lacquered, quietly accusing. They were polished yesterday, of course, and the day before, but that is the point. A kabuto that doesn't shine implies a warrior who doesn't care. And in a world where your social standing might hang on your commander's vague impression of your diligence, you cannot risk a single streak of dust. Historians still argue whether samurai polishing rituals were primarily practical maintenance or a form of status display. But as you hold the iron weight in your hands, it feels like both. Half pride, half drudgery. The morning light filters in through thin paper screens, throwing muted shadows across the room. It isn't bright enough to gleam off the metal yet, but it will be soon. Your fellow warriors shuffle to their tasks, kneeling in rows like monks about to chant. No chanting, though, just the dull scuff of cloth against armor, the scratch of brushes, and an occasional sneeze. You feel a strange comfort in this rhythm. Battle is chaos. Polishing is order. There's something absurdly cozy about this routine. Imagine, in a world where survival depends on 1,000 unpredictable forces, finding solace in wiping yesterday's dust from your helmet. Your fingers move in circles, repeating motions drilled into you since youth. It reminds you of polishing a car today, except the car doesn't weigh enough to crush your toes. Nor does it come with a crest shaped like antlers or demon horns. Factually speaking, kabuto were marvels of engineering. By the 16th century, they had dozens of overlapping iron plates riveted together, shaped to deflect sword strikes, even arrows. Some were so heavy that lifting one casually could leave your arms trembling, which is maybe why you're glad to do this sitting down. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some helmets were deliberately lacquered in glossy black, not just for waterproofing, but because warriors believed the reflection could frighten enemies or even dazzle them in sunlight. Practical or psychological? Historians still argue whether that was a genuine battlefield advantage or just a nice story samurai told themselves. As you work the cloth, you hear a crow outside cawing from the barracks roof, as if mocking your seriousness. Your neighbor clears his throat and mutters a complaint about the rice being too thin today, while another already humps a lullaby under his breath. It is too early for chatter, but in this half-light, everyone is too tired to care. Your hands move slower than you think. The texture of the cloth drags across the lacquer, squeaking faintly. There's something hypnotic about it. You pause, stretch your back, and realize this will take hours. Hours before even the faintest chance of battle, if battle comes at all. Samurai, you remind yourself, are remembered for courage, loyalty, the clash of katanas. But no one writes poems about helmet polishing. Maybe they should. Imagine a haiku. Iron helm gleams, black rice porridge cools in the bowl. Dawn waits unimpressed. Not great poetry, but it passes the time. You chuckle softly, then return to your task. Somewhere, a commander's sandal scuffs against the wooden floor outside. The barracks stiffens. You glance at your sabuto, still smudged, and work faster. Cloth sliding in urgent circles. Dust, rice husk residue, little flecks of oil. Everything must vanish. It feels like an exam where the teacher could walk in at any moment. And yet, the work is strangely calming. The more your hands move, the more your mind empties. You stop worrying about your stomach, about whether today will bring arrows or boredom, and you just focus on the shine creeping across the curve of iron. In this, you find the oddest truth. Polishing helmets might be the most peaceful thing a samurai ever does. You heft the kabuto, and immediately your arms understand why samurai never needed gym memberships. The thing is heavy, heavier than it looks, with its overlapping plates and riveted seams, all bound together like a stubborn puzzle of iron. It presses into your palms as you adjust your grip, and for a moment you almost laugh at the idea of strapping this weight onto your head and pretending you can run gracefully into battle. You probably won't survive this without a sore neck, but then again, no one really asked your opinion. The helmet, in its raw presence, feels like history condensed into an object. Every plate and rivet tells a story of a craftsman hunched over a forge, hammering rhythmically as sparks leapt into the night. By the 16th century, kabuto design had reached almost absurd complexity. Dozens of plates overlapped in a dome, carefully riveted together, distributing force so a sword strike wouldn't simply cave in the top of your head like a melon. Historians still argue whether every soldier had access to such finely crafted models, or if these masterpieces were reserved for wealthier warriors, while poorer ones had simpler, plainer helmets that wouldn't dazzle anyone. But right now, in your hands, the kabuto gleams with that aura of importance. And then there's the lacquer, thick, glossy, applied in layer after painstaking layer. It's waterproof, sure, but it also gives the helmet a shine that borders on vain. Imagine buying rain boots that also double as disco balls. That's the vibe. The finish reflects the thin morning light now slipping through paper screens, throwing a faint glow on the barracks floor. You tilt the kabuto this way and that, watching the reflections curve across its surface. And you can't help but feel like you're holding a very large, very expensive salad bowl. Of course, the Kabuto is no mere salad bowl. On top, there's often a tehen, a little decorative hole that looks like a vent. Scholars debate whether it truly helped with airflow or whether it was symbolic, meant to align the warrior with cosmic principles. Some even suggest it echoed Buddhist lotus imagery. Others shrug and say, maybe they just thought it looked cool. Either way, you can poke a finger toward it and imagine air wafting through when you're sweating beneath the iron. A comforting thought, even if it's mostly wishful. You turn the helmet in your hands, feeling the strain in your wrists. The inside is padded, of course, with layers of cloth and sometimes leather. Without that, the sheer weight would feel like balancing a cast-iron pot on your skull all day. Even so, the padding isn't exactly ergonomic by modern standards. You imagine strapping this on and then running through a muddy field. Spoiler alert. You wouldn't last 5 minutes without tripping or at least developing the mother of all headaches. But the samurai were trained for it. Carrying such weight wasn't just about protection. It was a symbol of endurance, toughness, and let's be honest, a little masochism. And yet, there's beauty in the burden. Some helmets had a lacquer so polished you could see your reflection, albeit a warped, funhouse reflection that probably didn't flatter anyone. Still, in a society where appearances carried almost as much weight as swords, that distorted shimmer mattered. Your commander, your comrades, maybe even your enemies, they would all see the care you took in maintaining your armor. A smudged kabuto might say you were sloppy, inattentive, a gleaming one. It whispered discipline, pride, and maybe just enough intimidation to make a rival hesitate. A quirky fact you might enjoy. Some samurai helmets were shaped in truly eccentric ways. There were kabuto topped with antlers, with horns, with seashell crests, even with giant moon-shaped decorations. One particularly bizarre example looked like a rabbit's ears had been bolted to the top. Imagine polishing those every morning. Awkward angles, strange crevices, and the lingering suspicion that your helmet made you look like an animal in a children's cartoon. Historians still argue whether these flamboyant designs were practical attempts to intimidate or just peacocking on the battlefield. Either way, someone had to polish them, and that someone might have been you. As you set the kabuto down for a moment, your hands ache with relief. The weight leaves an imprint in your palms, like you've been holding a small anvil. You flex your fingers, glance around, and see other warriors grimacing as they shift their own helmets. Nobody talks about the sheer physicality of just handling armor. It isn't glamorous, but it's real. Then you pick it up again, tilting it toward the faint light. You notice smudges where yesterday's polish wore off, fingerprints smeared along the lacquer. Those little imperfections glare at you like tiny accusations. They must be erased. The helmet demands it. The discipline demands it. And honestly, you'd rather fix them now than feel your commander's scowl later. So you brace yourself, adjusting the cloth in your hand, and prepare for hours of slow, circular motion that will leave your arms humming. And as you prepare to begin, a joke crosses your mind. If anyone today invented a samurai helmet polishing workout, you're pretty sure it would sell. Tone your arms while keeping your honor spotless. It would fit right into a late-night infomercial, complete with a samurai doing squats in full armor. Absurd? Completely. But as you feel the weight settle back into your hands, you realize you're already living that workout. You kneel on the worn tatami mat, and in front of you is a neatly arranged lineup of polishing tools. It looks, at first glance, a bit like an artist's workstation, though instead of paints and brushes, you've got rags, powders, and oils that smell faintly of earth and flowers. Each item has its role, and you find yourself moving your hands over them with a kind of unconscious ritual, the same way a cook lays out knives before slicing vegetables. First comes the cloth, soft, tightly woven, cut from worn-out garments. Old kimono sleeves sometimes. The fabric is thin enough to glide smoothly over lacquer, but strong enough not to fall apart at the first swipe. You fold it carefully, making a neat square. The folding matters. If you simply scrunch it up, the pressure will be uneven, and you'll leave streaks, which is the samurai equivalent of leaving toothpaste in the sink when your in-laws visit. Next is the polishing powder. It's faintly gritty, stored in a small pouch tied with cord. What is it? Ash sometimes. Crushed oyster shell if you're lucky. Rice husk powder if the quartermaster is feeling stingy. Each has its texture. Oyster shell gives a finer gleam. Ash is harsher, good for stripping stubborn grime. Rice husks are a humble, everyday option, like the generic brand polish, reliable if unspectacular. Historians still argue whether certain units had standardized kits or whether soldiers improvised with whatever was lying around the kitchen. Judging by the faint smell of last night's stew lingering on the pouch, you'd wager improvisation wins. Then there's oil, camellia oil, fragrant and slick, poured sparingly into a little ceramic pot. Just enough to coat the cloth and leave a thin film over the lacquer. Too much, and your helmet gleams like a greasy frying pan. Too little, and rust creeps in. It's a delicate balance, like putting on cologne before a date. The line between refined presence and "did you bathe in this stuff?" is thinner than you think. You also have brushes, short, stiff-bristled ones made from horsehair. These aren't for lacquer, but for crevices and rivets where cloth can't reach. You run your finger along the bristles and imagine some poor horse being brushed one day, then realizing part of its mane has been repurposed into your cleaning toolkit. Efficiency at its finest. And finally, you've got your own two hands. That sounds silly, but the truth is, every motion depends on how steady your fingers are, how much pressure you apply, how patient you remain. No cloth or powder will save you if you rush. That's a strange paradox. You are a warrior trained for quick, decisive action, but your helmet demands slowness, gentleness. It's like being a samurai and a spa attendant at the same time. The barracks buzzes around you as you prepare. Men cough, someone sneezes, someone else drops their cloth and curses softly under his breath. You hear the faint scrape of a whetstone from the corner where a sword is being sharpened. The sound is harsh, demanding. In contrast, your task is quiet, almost secretive. A quirky tidbit. Some manuals of the Edo period apparently described proper helmet maintenance with the same seriousness as sword forms. One line supposedly warns, "The warrior whose kabuto is dull invites dullness of spirit." Whether that's philosophy or just propaganda for neatness, historians still argue. But you feel the truth in it. A polished helmet doesn't just protect the skull, it protects the soul from looking sloppy. You dip the cloth lightly into the powder, shaking off the excess. A puff of dust rises, tickling your nose, and you sneeze so loudly that two men glance over. You shrug. Even in the solemn art of helmet polishing, allergies do not respect honor. The first touch of cloth against lacquer feels smooth, almost slippery. You move in small circles, pressing just enough to spread the powder. The helmet resists at first, the grime clinging stubbornly, but slowly it loosens. The circles become hypnotic. You're not just wiping, you're coaxing, persuading the kabuto to return to its natural gleaming self. It's like polishing a mirror that doesn't want to admit it's a mirror. As you work, you find yourself humming. Nothing elaborate, just a low, tuneless hum that matches the rhythm of your hands. Others begin to hum too. It becomes a strange chorus, a sleepy morning symphony of warriors hunched over helmets, each pretending not to notice the others doing the same. And here's where the comedy sneaks in. If an outsider walked in right now, expecting fierce samurai sharpening katanas, they'd instead see a room full of men delicately buffing iron bowls like housemaids preparing for inspection. The contrast is so absurd, you almost laugh. Warriors, yes, but warriors who care deeply about streak-free shine. Your cloth grows warm from the friction. You pause, refold it to find a clean surface, and continue. Slowly, a patch of lacquer emerges beneath your circles, darker and shinier than the surrounding dullness. It's like uncovering a star in a cloudy sky. That patch becomes your pride. You expand it, coaxing more stars to life, until the kabuto begins to glow faintly in the dim barracks light. This is the rhythm of your morning. Fold, dip, circle, breathe, over and over, a quiet meditation disguised as maintenance. You might even call it boring. And yet, in that boredom, you feel strangely at peace. The circles continue until they blur into muscle memory. You no longer need to think about them. Your fingers know where to press, how to turn, how to ease the cloth along the curve of the kabuto. The lacquer responds in kind, taking on that deep mirrored sheen you've been chasing since dawn. It's not instant gratification. It's the slow reward of patience. The helmet's surface catches the light from a paper lantern hanging nearby, and for a moment, the reflection almost seems alive. The lacquer made from the sap of the urushi tree has that uncanny gloss, black but with undertones of red and gold, like an oil puddle in sunlight. You can see your own faint reflection there, distorted and a little ridiculous, your face stretched by the curve. You smirk. Even in this dim light, you look like you've been awake too long. The lacquer itself is a marvel of chemistry, though no one in the barracks would use that word. It's made through layers, thin coats brushed on, dried, and then polished before the next coat is applied. Some say the process takes days, even weeks, and it requires humidity so precise that artisans often worked in damp cellars or forest huts. The result? A finish that could last centuries. In fact, historians still argue whether surviving samurai armor shines today because of the materials or the sheer obsessive craftsmanship behind it. Maybe both. You, however, are just trying to make yours less streaky. Your polishing cloth squeaks faintly against the helmet's smooth dome. That sound, a little whistle of friction, is oddly satisfying. The surface beneath your fingers grows warmer, almost alive. There's something ceremonial in this motion, even sacred. In a way, this is your prayer, a quiet act of devotion before the noise of the day begins. Someone coughs from across the room. Another warrior, older, mutters a line under his breath. A dull helm, a dull fate. You smile without looking up. It's a common saying, part warning, part joke. Every barracks has its own set of sayings like that. Half superstition, half work ethic. They remind everyone that polishing isn't just vanity, it's virtue. You tilt your kabuto slightly, studying the reflection of the rafters above. The glow deepens. The lacquer seems to absorb the room's dimness and turn it into quiet radiance. You can almost imagine the artisans centuries from now, their hands sticky with sap, squinting in the low light as they brushed on the next impossibly thin layer. You feel connected to them, different centuries, same patient gestures. It's strange how something so mundane can feel meaningful. You pause to stretch your neck, your joints creaking like an old door. A drop of sweat trickles down your temple, landing right on the helmet's crown. You sigh, grab another cloth, and erase it before it leaves a mark. The irony of sweating over something designed to protect you from sweat is not lost on you. A young samurai beside you grumbles, "If we polished our swords half as much, the enemy would run from the glare alone." You chuckle. "Maybe that's the plan," you reply. The idea of blinding your foes with excessive shininess isn't entirely outlandish. After all, some commanders did prefer highly polished armor for intimidation. Historians still argue whether the practice had any real tactical advantage, or if it was just for ceremony. You suspect the latter. It's hard to look terrifying when you're also reflecting sunlight into your own eyes. The room hums with the soft, repetitive sounds of effort. Brushes whisper, cloths rustle, the occasional sniff punctuates the rhythm. It's almost musical in its monotony. There's something hypnotic about it, like waves lapping at a shore, only made of metal and discipline instead of salt and sand. You notice a faint scent of lacquer mixed with camellia oil rising from your helmet. It's sweet and earthy, like old wood mixed with floral perfume. That smell clings to samurai barracks everywhere, an aroma of preparation, patience, and quiet tension. Later, when the armor is worn into battle, that same scent will mingle with sweat, dust, and smoke. But right now, in this calm before the storm, it's oddly soothing. You lean in closer, examining a tiny imperfection near the back edge. A nick in the lacquer, maybe from a dropped tool weeks ago. You rub gently, hoping to blend it in, but it remains stubborn. You mutter a quiet complaint to no one in particular. The kabuto doesn't care. It endures. That's its job. There's a saying that polishing armor teaches humility, because no matter how hard you try, there will always be a flaw. Maybe that's the lesson here. Perfection is a myth, but the act of striving toward it builds character. Or maybe you're just trying to justify why your fingers ache and your knees are going numb. Either way, you keep going. The lacquer shines now, dark as ink, yet alive with subtle glimmers. You blow softly across the surface to clear the dust, and the air catches the faintest reflection of your breath. It's beautiful in a quiet, unshowy way. You realize you could stare at this sheen for hours. Maybe that's why it's called the art of polish. It's not about the helmet. It's about losing yourself in the shine. You laugh quietly to yourself. If someone told you years ago that becoming a warrior meant mastering the art of gentle circles, you'd have called them crazy. Yet here you are, circling away, one motion at a time, chasing light on iron. You lean back, rubbing your wrists for a moment, and look again at the crest sitting proudly at the top of your kabuto, the medate. It's the part everyone notices first, even before the lacquer, and in the dim lantern light it looks almost theatrical. A golden crescent moon catching the faint glow from the window. You can't help but grin. If the helmet itself is a soldier's skull, then the crest is his personality, loud, dramatic, and sometimes a little ridiculous. Your fingers reach up, tracing the edge of the metal ornament. The design depends entirely on your clan. Some wear family emblems, others the symbols of gods or animals. The really daring ones wear horns that could double as coat racks. You've seen one with enormous deer antlers so wide that the poor man couldn't fit through a doorway without turning sideways. Historians still argue whether these crests were meant for spiritual protection, identification, or pure intimidation. Maybe all three, or maybe samurai fashion just got out of hand. You take a small brush and begin dusting around the crest's base. The medate gathers grime faster than the rest of the helmet because of its intricate carvings. The edges catch soot, and sometimes bits of straw or dust from yesterday's drills cling to it like barnacles. You blow gently, then polish the curves with the corner of your cloth, careful not to loosen the delicate fittings. One wrong tug, and your family symbol would come tumbling off. Not exactly a great look for the clan's reputation. The crests themselves were a language. A crescent moon might symbolize vigilance, a dragon, ferocity, a lotus, serenity and chaos. Your own, the crescent, was supposedly inspired by the famous warlord Date Masamune, known as the One-Eyed Dragon. He wore his moon-shaped crest so boldly that enemies could spot him from across the battlefield, a giant reflective arc glinting like a cosmic eyebrow. You imagine him riding into combat, light bouncing off his helmet like a beacon, probably blinding both friend and foe alike. But that was the point. Attention. Samurai armor wasn't designed just for protection. It was meant to project identity. You weren't a faceless soldier in a uniform line. You were a living banner, your armor a statement of who you served, who you were, and how seriously you took your honor. You polish not just to clean, but to preserve that statement. Every gleam says, "My lineage endures." As you polish, you remember a story your sensei once told about a samurai who refused to wear his family crest during battle. He claimed humility, saying the gods knew his worth without such decoration. The other warriors laughed and called him the Naked Crest. The next day he polished his armor so thoroughly that it gleamed brighter than anyone's insignia. The moral, your sensei said, was that even humility requires maintenance. You're still not entirely sure what that means, but it sounded profound enough to remember. You pause for a moment, flexing your stiff fingers. Your knuckles ache. Polishing around the medate is a delicate dance. One wrong move and you'll slice the cloth, or worse, scratch the lacquer. You glance across the barracks and see another warrior struggling with his own crest. A fearsome demon face that refuses to stay upright. He curses softly, adjusts it again, and mutters something about the demon having opinions. You suppress a chuckle. There's a rhythm in all this that feels ancient. The smell of camellia oil mixes with dust and sweat, creating an oddly comforting atmosphere. The room hums with the faint scuffs of cloth and the slow, steady breathing of concentration. You imagine that 100 years from now, another warrior will be doing the same thing. Same tools, same smell, same quiet patience. Time folds in on itself in the gleam of lacquer. A faint breeze slips through the paper screens. It stirs the light ash on the floor and flickers the lanterns. You look up, watching the shadows move across the helmets lined along the wall. Rows of dark, reflective domes, each topped with its proud crest. It almost feels like they're watching you back. The sight is eerie and beautiful. You resume working the edges, rubbing in small practiced motions. The gold shines now, warm and steady. It catches the light in a way that makes your heart swell a little. You're not just maintaining a piece of armor. You're caring for a piece of art. Some modern historians call these helmets the portraiture of warriors, since no two were ever exactly alike. The individuality, the flair, it all mattered. And yet, you can't help but imagine the practical side. In the chaos of battle, you'd think such ornaments would make you an easy target. A moon crest practically screams, "Hit me right here." Historians still argue whether the crests were detachable in combat, or if most samurai simply hoped intimidation would outweigh visibility. The evidence is mixed, and you, for one, prefer not to test the theory. As your fingers move in slow, steady circles, the gold gleams brighter, smooth, and flawless. You sit back and admire your work, tilting the helmet left, then right. The crescent moon winks back at you, half light and half shadow. You feel a twinge of pride, the quiet, personal kind that doesn't need applause. Then, just as you're about to set the kabuto aside, your neighbor whispers, "You missed a spot." You freeze, glance over, and realize he's grinning. You both laugh, the kind of low, tired laughter shared between people who know the absurdity of what they're doing. The crescent still gleams, smug and silent. And for now, that's enough. You tilt your helmet carefully, letting the crescent crest catch the faint morning light sneaking through the rice paper walls. The polishing is done, but your work isn't finished yet. The helmet is only as strong as its pieces, and the inner padding, the part that actually meets your skin, needs as much care as the shining metal. You lift the kabuto and look inside. The inner lining smells faintly of camellia oil and sweat. Not unpleasant, just human. A faint, worn fabric cushion hugs the crown, stitched with surprising care. Some warriors treat this padding like an afterthought, but you know better. A beautifully lacquered helmet means nothing if it gives you a migraine halfway through a march. You pick up a small brush and begin sweeping away the dust inside. It gathers in corners and seams, little ghosts of your last training day. A few stray hairs cling to the stitching, and you pluck them free. The fabric itself, usually made of hemp, silk, or cotton, depending on wealth and rank, has darkened from constant use. You remember reading somewhere the samurai used rice starch mixed with vinegar as a mild cleanser. It sounds more like a salad dressing than a cleaning agent, but apparently it worked. You dampen a bit of cloth and gently wipe the lining, careful not to soak it. The air smells faintly of vinegar now, and you wrinkle your nose. So this, you think, is the scent of tradition. You grin to yourself. The price of glory apparently includes smelling like pickled vegetables. The process is slow, almost meditative. As your hand moves in circles, your mind drifts. You think about how samurai armor wasn't mass-produced. Each piece was tailored to its owner's head. Armorers took measurements so precise they could probably recognize you by skull shape alone. Historians still argue whether some helmets were intentionally molded to exaggerate certain head shapes, a subtle way to give the warrior a more heroic silhouette. You pull a soft thread from the seam and snip it neatly. The stitching holds. You're relieved. Resewing a kabuto lining requires steady fingers and the patience of a monk. Some soldiers would bring spare linings, switching them between battles like socks. You don't have that luxury. You just patch and pray. In the corner of the barracks, a younger warrior sneezes explosively into his helmet, then groans. You exchange a look, part amusement, part pity. Cleaning that mess will take him hours. You give him a sympathetic nod before returning to your own task. You can almost hear your old sensei again, his gravelly voice echoing from years past. The inside of your armor reflects the inside of your mind. At the time, you thought it was nonsense. Now, you're not so sure. There's something grounding about maintaining the invisible parts, the parts no one else sees. The act of caring for them, even when you could easily hide the dirt, feels like a small lesson in discipline. The padding dries slowly as you fan it gently. You lean closer, inspecting every seam, every stitch. The fabric looks rough, but carries a kind of quiet dignity. Generations before you have done the same. Men who slept on dirt floors, marched through mud, yet still made time to clean their armor before sunrise. One quirky story says some samurai lined their helmets with charms, tiny paper slips with Buddhist sutras or names of protective spirits. The logic was simple. If your helmet failed, maybe the gods would act as extra padding. You check under your lining just to be sure. Nothing but dust and a stray hair. Maybe the gods are minimalist today. You set the kabuto aside for a moment and flex your neck. The ache is familiar, a dull pull from holding still too long. You roll your shoulders, hear a few satisfying cracks, and glance outside. The dawn mist is rising, curling like soft smoke beyond the courtyard walls. Somewhere, a rooster sounds offended at the idea of being awake. A companion walks past, his helmet freshly polished, crest gleaming like firelight. He stops beside you, peeks inside yours, and hums approvingly. "Clean enough to eat from," he says, grinning. "But please don't." You laugh. Humor is currency here, small moments of absurdity that keep sanity intact between drills. You pick up a faintly oiled rag and give the outer rim one last wipe, connecting inner care with outer shine. The two halves, seen and unseen, complete each other. It's like the samurai code itself. Honor isn't just about what others notice, but what you maintain in private. And yet, even in all this precision, doubt lingers. You think of those historians again, debating whether samurai truly performed these rituals daily, or if modern romanticism exaggerated their discipline. Maybe some warriors just tossed their helmets in a corner after battle and called it a day. You'll never know. But you like to imagine they cared, because caring gives meaning to repetition. The light outside grows brighter, filtering into the barracks. The room glows softly now, the lacquered armor catching pale gold reflections. You run your thumb along the crest one final time, ensuring no dust dulls its curve. Then, with a quiet exhale, you lower the kabuto onto its stand. There's a moment of stillness. You sit back, eyes half closed, letting the silence stretch. Around you, the other warriors are doing the same, a quiet choreography of cloth, breath, and patience. The barrack smells of oil, vinegar, and faint incense. It's oddly peaceful, almost sacred. You think, this is what they don't write in the chronicles. The battles, yes, they get all the glory. But these slow, sleepy mornings of maintenance, this is where a samurai's true rhythm lives. You rest your palms on your knees, watching the helmet gleam in front of you, catching the sunrise in its curve. For a fleeting second, you can see your reflection inside the crescent moon, small, warped, but undeniably there. Outside, the courtyard hums to life in a rhythm you've come to know by heart. Wooden sandals shuffle over packed dirt. Armor plates clink like wind chimes. And somewhere nearby, the distinct hiss of whetstones cutting across steel breaks the morning calm. The world smells faintly of oil, iron, and breakfast, all the essentials of warrior life. You pause your polishing for a moment, letting the sounds soak in. There's comfort in the repetition, the same scraping, the same murmurs, the same groans from someone who clearly overdid the sock last night. Every morning in the barrack sounds exactly like this, and somehow that's what makes it peaceful. You pick up your kabuto again, holding it near your ear as if the lacquered shell might hum with the day's mood. It's light now, cool to the touch, and shines so evenly that the faint beams of sun bouncing off it dance across the tatami floor. You tilt it slightly, watching the reflections move, lazy, golden, almost hypnotic. The air is heavy with the scent of camellia oil. To your left, a young warrior is oiling his sword with an almost reverent focus. His hands move in small, measured circles, a perfect echo of what you were doing moments ago. The sound of the whetstone scraping against his blade mixes with the muted chatter of others discussing the weather. Yes, the weather. Even in the shadow of battle, someone always talks about clouds. Historians still argue whether this kind of pre-battle calm was intentional discipline or simply boredom wearing a polite face. Either way, you can't deny that the soundscape has its own strange serenity. A senior warrior walks past, humming under his breath, an old war tune that's somehow cheerful despite being about starvation and mud. He stops to adjust his cuirass, the plates creaking like stiff leather. You nod politely as he passes. He doesn't notice. His world is made entirely of sound and habit now. You start polishing again, and soon your own rhythm blends into the collective hum. The hiss of cloth on lacquer, the distant ring of a bell marking another hour, the occasional thud of a clumsy soldier dropping a helmet and immediately pretending it never happened. It's a symphony of small imperfections. The lacquered surface beneath your fingertips is smoother now. You can almost see your reflection, not clear enough for vanity, but enough to remind you that you're part of something larger. This act of care, repeated by generations, connects you to men long gone. Every scratch removed is a small conversation across time. You glance toward the weapon racks at the far end of the room. Spears lean in perfect rows, their points wrapped in cloth. Bows rest unstrung, the cords coiled like sleeping snakes. Even the weapons seem to be holding their breath. Outside, someone laughs, a short, loud burst that makes heads turn. You can't hear what caused it, but the laughter fades quickly, replaced by the clatter of someone setting a bucket down too hard. The routine continues, undisturbed. You take a slow breath and let your awareness expand. There's a smell of steamed rice drifting in from the kitchen, the faint smoke of burning pine wood from the brazier, a soft breeze that sneaks through the window slats, carrying with it the sound of distant temple bells. For a brief moment, you imagine this entire scene from above. A wooden barracks tucked into the folds of a misty hillside, warriors scattered like ants, each one performing the same quiet ritual of maintenance. None of them speak loudly. None of them rush. It's as if the act of polishing itself is a form of collective meditation. Somewhere in the corner, one of the younger men is humming tunelessly. You recognize the melody, a festival song from his province, meant to celebrate rice harvests. He probably doesn't even realize he's doing it. You smile faintly because there's something deeply human about that, carrying a piece of home into the waiting silence of war. The sound of the whetstone grows louder for a moment, and you glance over to see a fellow soldier sharpening his blade a little too enthusiastically. Sparks leap briefly. Tiny orange fireflies against the morning gray. You raise an eyebrow. Trying to wake the gods, you mutters under your breath. He grins sheepishly and slows down. There's something almost comical about it all. The seriousness with which everyone polishes, sharpens, folds, and reties straps that will probably be filthy again by nightfall. But that's the rhythm of discipline. It's not about results. It's about rehearsal. Your mind drifts again to a curious fact your old instructor once mentioned. Some elite samurai families hired musicians to play soft flute tunes during armor preparation. The gentle sound, they claimed, steadied the hands and cleared the mind. Historians still argue whether that tradition ever truly existed or was later romanticized by Edo poets. You imagine it anyway, a lone flute echoing across a courtyard of polished steel. The idea itself feels soothing enough. Someone coughs beside you, breaking your trance. You're polishing that helmet like it owes you money, the man jokes. You chuckle. It does, you say, still moving your cloth in small, deliberate circles. Outside, the sun has finally burned through the morning haze. You can see light pooling on the courtyard stones, turning the puddles into patches of silver. Men move through them carefully, stepping around reflections of themselves as though afraid to break them. For a moment, you set the helmet aside and close your eyes. The sounds blend. Armor creaking, fire crackling, distant laughter, into a lullaby of iron and effort. It's oddly beautiful. You realize this might be the last quiet morning before a march. The idea doesn't feel heavy, just distant, like thunder behind the hills. You push it away gently. For now, the sound of whetstones and oil is enough. You open your eyes again and reach for your cloth. The helmet gleams softly, patient and perfect. You catch your reflection, blurred, half-formed, and smile. Maybe polishing armor is just another way of polishing thought. You hear it before you see it. The soft laughter, the clinking of small ceramic cups, and the low murmur of men who, for this brief moment, are not warriors, but just humans trying to pass the time. The polishing circle has shifted into gossip hour. You don't even look up. You just let the chatter wash over you while your hands continue their lazy work on the kabuto's side flanges. The air is thicker now, heavy with a mix of oil, sweat, and the sweet scent of roasted barley tea. Someone's managed to sneak in a small kettle again, and the faint bubbling is oddly comforting. You hear one of the older samurai clear his throat, preparing to launch into another of his famous, "I once served under the daimyo's uncle's cousin's retainer" stories. You brace yourself. "So," he begins, dragging the word out. "The daimyo looked right at me and said, 'That's the cleanest armor I've ever seen.'" There's a pause, then laughter ripples through the room. Everyone knows the man is lying, or at least exaggerating, but no one bothers to call him on it. The story isn't the point. The point is the ritual, polishing, talking, laughing quietly so the commander won't hear. You keep your cloth moving, watching how light dances over the freshly oiled curve. "The daimyo, huh?" you mutter. "Did he also personally pour you sake afterward?" The man points his rag at you like a sword. "He would have," he says, mock serious, "if he weren't busy admiring my reflection." More laughter. It's quiet, restrained. Samurai humor is like their sword play. Controlled, measured, but sharp when it lands. You lean back for a moment, stretching your shoulders, and glance around the room. Every face tells the same story. Focused eyes, half smiles, a kind of peaceful boredom that borders on meditation. The sound of rubbing cloth fills every gap in conversation. One of the younger soldiers breaks in with a grin. "Do you think the daimyo even notices how shiny our helmets are?" You snort softly. "If he does, it's probably only to check if he can use them as a mirror." The laughter this time is genuine. Someone chokes on his tea, sputtering, and curses under his breath before remembering that cursing in the barracks isn't exactly encouraged. You pat him on the back, trying not to laugh harder. The talk drifts like smoke, never holding one shape for long. Someone mentions rumors of a rival clan's defeat. Another tells a story about a merchant who tried to sell fake silk under the guise of battle-tested fabric. Apparently it unraveled in the first rainstorm, and the man is still running for his life. You can't help but smile. For a culture so obsessed with honor, gossip is surprisingly popular. Maybe because it's safe. It's war without the blood. You continue polishing, but your mind wanders to the idea of conversations as armor. In a way, this quiet banter protects the mind as surely as iron protects the body. You talk about meaningless things, the price of fish, who snores loudest in the barracks, how many mosquitoes could fit inside a single sleeve, because the alternative would be talking about tomorrow. Historians still argue whether samurai were truly as stoic as the old scrolls claim, or if that image was carefully curated later by poets and screenwriters. But sitting here, you can't imagine a room full of men maintaining silence all morning. There's too much energy, too much humanity. Even discipline needs laughter to breathe. You pick up the helmet and tilt it toward one of the others. "Well, shiny enough to blind an enemy?" He squints dramatically, shielding his eyes. "I can see my tragic life choices in it." You both laugh quietly. The old samurai from earlier shakes his head. "In my day," he says, "we polished until the gods could use our helmets as lanterns." "Must have been hard to sleep with all that divine light," you reply, keeping your tone light. The man grins, showing a few missing teeth. We didn't sleep. We meditated with snoring. It's ridiculous, but the rhythm of these exchanges is strangely calming. They make the room feel less like a barracks and more like a household, a strange, creaky family where everyone smells faintly of steel and vinegar. You remember reading that some samurai clans held chatting circles on the eve of battle, informal gatherings where men could talk freely, unjudged, about anything except fear. Fear was a private affair, but laughter was communal. Historians still debate whether these rituals were officially sanctioned or just tolerated, but it feels true enough right now. The kettle hisses softly. Someone pours tea, offering you a cup. The liquid is lukewarm and earthy, and it cuts through the metallic tang of oil in the air. You sip slowly, savoring the warmth. The helmet gleams beside you, forgotten for the moment. You realize how easily the mind drifts in moments like this. Small talk as a bridge between worlds. One part of you is already imagining tomorrow's march, the weight of the armor, the echo of drums. The other part wants to stay here, forever polishing and listening to bad jokes. You glance around again. Every man in the room is doing the same thing, working, chatting, existing in the narrow space between peace and preparation. It's a suspended reality held together by oil, laughter, and routine. One last joke makes its way through the group. You polish a helmet long enough, you'll see your ancestors waving back. Someone responds, then you'd better hope they're proud of your technique. The laughter fades gradually into quiet again. Cloth still moves, the kettle still hums, and the day stretches lazily ahead. The warmth of the tea sits heavy in your chest. You look down at your hands, stained with oil and effort, and smile. Maybe the true art of the samurai wasn't in battle after all, but in how they filled the hours before it. You reach for the small porcelain jar resting near your knee, the camellia oil you've been saving for the final touch. Its lid sticks a little, sealed by dried residue, and you twist it gently until it pops free with a soft click. The smell that escapes is faint but unmistakable. Floral, clean, and slightly sweet. A scent that belongs to both gardens and armories. You dip 2 fingers inside, coating them with a light sheen of oil. It glows amber in the sunlight streaming through the slatted window. This is the good stuff, the kind reserved for fine armor and fancy hair. You remember hearing that the same oil was used by noble women for their skin, though the thought of comparing a kabuto to a beauty regimen makes you snort quietly. Still, there's something poetic about it. The same oil that softens hair and soothes skin is also what protects iron from rust. Beauty and battle sharing the same bottle. You press the oil into the cloth and begin rubbing it across the kabuto's surface in long, slow motions. The lacquer darkens slightly under your touch, deepening to a black so rich it could swallow the light itself. You work methodically, starting from the crown and moving outward, tracing the curve of each plate, each seam, each rivet head. The helmet gleams more now, like a calm pond after rain. Every stroke feels slower, more deliberate, part care, part ritual. The oil fills tiny cracks invisible to the eye, sealing them against moisture and time. You think of the craftsmen who made this piece decades ago. Men who probably never imagined it would still be cared for this long. A fellow samurai slides closer on his mat, holding his own jar of oil. "You're still using camellia?" he asks, with the slightly superior tone of a man who thinks he knows better. "I switched to sesame last year. Doesn't clump in the cold." You shrug. "Sesame smells like tempura," you reply. He grins. "Then your helmet must smell like a garden." You both chuckle. The conversation ends there. No debate needed. In truth, there was debate about oils. Historians still argue whether samurai preferred camellia, sesame, or even fish oil, depending on region and climate. Each had its champions, its secret formulas, its inherited superstitions. Some swore by a few drops of sake mixed in for luck. Others said sake would anger the gods of steel. You, personally, just like how this one smells. The oiling process takes time, and that's the point. It slows you down, forces you to notice details you'd otherwise miss. A small nick near the edge, a faint dent from training practice. You pause there, fingers resting on the imperfection. You could try to hide it with more oil, but you don't. It's part of the story now. Outside, you hear the low boom of a taiko drum, the signal for midday drills. A few men groan quietly, reluctant to break the tranquil rhythm of maintenance. You stay seated, still finishing your task, pretending not to hear for just another minute. The scent of camellia drifts upward as you work. The helmet now catches the light like a pool of ink. You hold it up, tilt it slightly, and there you are again. A faint reflection distorted by the curve. Your face framed by black lacquer and steel. You can't help but smile. There's something almost vain about admiring your work, but after hours of polishing, you've earned it. You lay the kabuto gently on the mat, then take a smaller rag to clean the cords and rivet edges. Each cord, woven from silk, holds tension perfectly balanced between beauty and function. You remember reading that some clans dyed their cords specific colors to symbolize virtues: red for courage, blue for serenity, black for loyalty. Yours are an earthy brown, practical and unassuming, much like your rank. A strange memory flickers in your mind. Your first armor inspection years ago. You'd spent an entire night polishing, only for your superior. You glance at your helmet and say, "Too shiny. You'll reflect sunlight into your own eyes." You were furious at the time. Now you can't help but laugh. You understand what he meant. Perfection has its own kind of arrogance. One of the older men nearby is quietly telling a story about how his father used to polish armor during the Edo peace, long after battles had ceased. He said it kept him disciplined, the man recalls. He never stopped polishing, even when there was nothing left to fight. You nod silently. You can see how that would happen. Routine outlasts purpose sometimes, and maybe that's not such a bad thing. The camellia oil glistens faintly on your fingers as you wipe them on the rag. A thin film remains, soft and smooth, catching the light like dew. You remember an old saying. Steel remembers the hand that cares for it. Maybe that's why samurai gave so much attention to their armor. It was a relationship, not just maintenance. You check every angle one last time, squinting for stray streaks. The surface looks flawless. You can see the wooden beams of the barrack ceiling reflected upside down on the dome. You tilt the helmet again and see your own face upside down, too. The eyes tired, the mouth faintly amused. You can't help but think that even your reflection looks more disciplined than you feel. The taiko booms again, louder this time. A collective groan ripples through the barracks. You set the helmet aside, satisfied, and begin cleaning your tools. The rag is stained now, the oil pot half empty, and your hands smell faintly of flowers and iron. Not a bad combination, all things considered. As you pack your things away, the chatter around you returns. Light, sleepy voices discussing lunch, drills, or nothing at all. Someone hums a tune. Another whistles off key. The harmony of it fills the air like incense smoke. Before you rise, you give the kabuto one final glance. It sits on the mat like a sleeping creature, gleaming quietly. For a moment, you imagine it breathing, waiting for the day's command. You smile faintly and whisper under your breath, "Don't get scratched." When you finally rise, your knees crack softly, the small, unglamorous sound of age and duty. You stretch your legs, feeling the blood return, and step out into the courtyard. The air hits you differently here, cooler, touched with the scent of damp earth and distant pine. The sun is beginning to climb higher, sharpening the silhouettes of rooftops and banners fluttering along the walls. Around you, the castle grounds are coming alive in quiet rhythm. Men in partial armor walk between the storehouses and stables, carrying bundles of arrows, water buckets, or freshly polished weapons. The steady clack of wooden sandals echoes against stone, mingling with the softer rustle of fabric and the chirping of sparrows that have made a home under the eaves. You make your way toward the practice field. It's a broad stretch of packed dirt bordered by low fences and a line of bamboo stands that tremble faintly in the wind. At the far end, young samurai are already training with their instructors, wooden swords striking in timed unison, each blow followed by a sharp kiai. You watch them for a moment, remembering how exhausting that rhythm once felt when you were in their place. Back then, you thought every strike had to be perfect. Now you know it's not about perfection, but persistence. The endless loop of practice, polish, rest, repeat. A senior retainer greets you with a curt nod. "Morning maintenance done?" "Yes," you answer. "Armor's oiled, cords checked. I even managed not to cut myself this time." He laughs softly. "Good, let's keep it that way." You walk together toward the weapon racks where the day's training swords rest. You reach for one, the bakken smooth and slightly warm from the sun. The wood feels alive, as if storing the energy of 100 strikes within its grain. You bow briefly before stepping onto the dirt, setting your stance. The first strike comes easy, muscle memory guiding the motion. The second follows almost without thought. You begin to fall into rhythm. One breath, one cut. Dust rises around your feet, curling like smoke. The sound of bamboo swords clashing nearby merges with your own movements, creating a kind of accidental music. A few of the younger men glance your way, watching the precision of your form. You can feel their eyes, but you don't perform for them. You strike because it calms you, the same way polishing armor does. The repetition is meditation. Each swing erases thought. As you move, you think of the countless generations who trained like this across centuries of peace and chaos. The motions don't change, even when the wars do. In that way, samurai life is like a ritual candle, passed from hand to hand, flame unbroken. After an hour, you pause to catch your breath. Sweat has darkened your sleeves, and your pulse beats steadily beneath the armor padding. Across the yard, a few men are wiping their faces, panting, laughing quietly between sets. You see one of them, a young recruit, maybe 16, practicing clumsily with a sword that looks too heavy for him. His stance is wrong, his grip too tight. You walk over. "Loosen your shoulders," you say, not unkindly. You're fighting your own sword. He blinks, surprised, then obeys. You adjust his footing with a light tap of your hand. "There. Feel that? Let the weapon move. Don't choke it." He nods, breathless. "Yes, sir." You step back, watching him repeat the motion. Better, smoother. You remember when someone once corrected your stance the same way, a teacher long gone now, whose voice you can still hear in your mind. Even in war, be graceful. The sword should look effortless. The boy glances at you for approval, and you nod once. Good. Again. He grins faintly and continues, determination in his eyes. You turn away, returning to your mat near the edge of the yard. For a while you sit and watch the others train, the blur of motion, the rhythm of breath, the shout of focus. It's a beautiful sight in its own strange way. Order within chaos. A small gust of wind sweeps across the courtyard, carrying with it a single pink petal from somewhere beyond the walls, perhaps a late-blooming cherry tree. It drifts through the air and lands silently near your knee. You pick it up between your fingers, studying it. Delicate, pointless, perfect. You think, not for the first time, about how fleeting all of this is. How the samurai's greatest paradox is that his entire existence is built around preparing for death. Yet his daily life is filled with acts of care, polishing, repairing, teaching, waiting. Duty isn't glorious, it's quiet. It smells like oil and dust and sweat. The drum sounds again, lunch call this time. The rhythm changes everything. Men pause mid-swing, voices rise. Laughter echoes. You stand slowly, your legs a little stiff, and follow the flow toward the mess hall. Inside, the air's thick with steam and chatter. Bowls of rice and pickled vegetables clatter onto low tables. Someone passes you a cup of barley tea, and you bow slightly in thanks before sitting down. The food is plain, but good. Warm rice, a slice of salted fish, a few strips of burdock root. You eat quietly, listening to the conversations around you. One group discussing horse tack, another gossiping about a rumored duel in a nearby province. It's a world made of small talk and steel. At the end of the meal, you set your bowl aside and sip the last of your tea. The warmth spreads through your chest, gentle and grounding. For a brief moment, you let yourself relax fully, leaning back on your hands. The day stretches ahead, drills, cleaning, maybe night patrol if the schedule demands it. And yet, in this small moment of stillness, you feel something rare. Contentment. You're not fighting, not polishing, not obeying, just being. The breeze slips through the paper walls, carrying the faint scent of camellia oil from the barracks, where your armor still waits, gleaming in the quiet. You smile, and for the first time today, the thought of all that polishing feels like something close to peace. Afternoon settles over the compound like a slow exhale. The kind of still, golden calm that makes even the sparrows go quiet for a while. You rise from the meal with the rest of the men, your knees stiff, but your mind oddly light. The courtyard feels different now, less tense, more domestic. A few men linger near the well, splashing their faces. Another snores quietly in the shade of a cypress. You, however, make your way back toward the armory. There's still a faint tang of oil and leather in the air, and the rhythmic scrape of a whetstone echoes from within. It's not your turn for weapon maintenance today, but you step inside anyway, partly out of habit, partly because you can't resist the soothing sound of tools doing what they were meant to do. Inside, the atmosphere is meditative. A handful of samurai sit cross-legged along the benches, each with a sword laid across his knees. They move their hands with slow precision, not hurried, not lazy, as if time itself were bowing to their rhythm. The faint whisper of the stone gliding along steel repeats like a heartbeat. You sit beside them and take up a blade from the rack. The sword isn't yours, but the weight feels familiar. A friend's hand resting in yours. You inspect the edge, noting where the line dulls, then begin to sharpen. Back and forth, gentle pressure, never forcing the stone. There's something about this work that quiets even the busiest mind. You can't rush it. Impatience only chips the blade. So you breathe, matching the motion to your pulse. The grain of the metal reveals itself slowly, like ripples in a pond. You think of the word Haman, the wave pattern along the edge that shows where the swordsmith folded the steel. Some patterns look like mountains, others like clouds. Historians still argue whether those variations were purely aesthetic or whether they affected the blade's strength. You've never much cared which answer is true. What matters is that each sword has a personality, as individual as the men who carry them. "Still at it?" a voice says behind you. It's one of the younger retainers holding a tray of fresh rags. "You spend more time with blades than people." You smile faintly. "Blades don't gossip." He laughs, placing the tray down. "True, but they also don't pour you sake." You concede the point with a small bow of your head, returning to your work. The steel glints briefly in the light filtering through the window slats. Outside, you can hear the faint hum of cicadas beginning their afternoon chorus. The rhythm of polishing gives you time to think about the men you've fought beside, the ones you've lost, and the ones too young to know what's coming. You wonder if they'll ever find peace, or if the cycle of readiness will keep turning forever. After an hour, you set the sword aside, perfectly sharp now, and flex your fingers. The tips are slightly raw from the rag's friction, but you don't mind. The pain feels honest, earned. A shout from the courtyard breaks the calm. Not an alarm, just a call for inspection. You dust off your hands and step outside once more. The sun has tilted westward, and the shadows of the barracks stretch long and soft across the ground. In the open yard, the commander stands beneath the raised banner, his armor gleaming in bands of light. Around him, the samurai gather in formation, neat lines of muted color and discipline. You join your place silently, hands resting at your sides. The commander's voice is steady, but carries authority. He speaks of the usual matters, the state of the castle walls, the messenger from Kyoto, the small skirmish reported in a distant province. His tone is measured. No panic, no pride. Just information, as calm as water poured from a cup. And then, the part you half expected. "There may be movement in the north," he says. "We keep readiness drills for the next 3 days." A low murmur moves through the ranks. Not fear, not excitement, but the quiet hum of acknowledgement. Readiness means polishing again, tightening again, repeating the rituals you've already mastered. Oh, when the assembly dismisses, you linger a little longer in the courtyard. The sky above has softened to a pale amber, and a cool breeze stirs the dust. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays, faint, meandering, unsure whether it's a melody or just someone idly passing the time. You follow the sound around the corner of the stables. There, perched on a wooden step, sits one of the castle's attendants, a boy no older than 12, holding a bamboo flute far too big for his small hands. He pauses mid-tune when he sees you, startled. "Don't stop," you say gently. "The wind doesn't care if you miss a note." He smiles shyly and resumes. The melody drifts upward, thin and sweet. It reminds you of river water flowing over stones, never in a hurry to reach the sea. You close your eyes and listen. For a moment, you forget about drills, swords, or armor. The castle around you fades, replaced by the steady whisper of music and wind. When the boy finishes, he bows awkwardly. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you, sir." "You didn't," you reply. "That was exactly what this place needed." He beams, proud in the small, quiet way of children who rarely receive praise. You leave him there, humming softly to himself as the last notes melt into evening. Back in your quarters, you sit once more before your armor. The lacquer still gleams faintly, catching the dying light through the window. You run your hand along the smooth curve of the helmet, tracing the edge where metal meets cord. You think of how tomorrow and the next day, and the day after that, this ritual will repeat. The sun will rise, the oil will warm, the swords will gleam. And maybe, if fortune allows, you'll grow old enough to teach another how to do it all again. Duty, repetition, peace. The trinity of a samurai's quiet life. By dusk, the castle begins to breathe differently. The sounds change. Fewer boots, more sandals. The clang of swords gives way to the softer rhythm of footsteps and hushed conversation. Lanterns bloom one by one along the walkways, their paper shades glowing like tiny moons against the indigo evening. You stand near the barracks for a moment, watching that light shimmer along the lacquer of your polished helmet, and you think how strange it is that something made for war could reflect so much beauty. You lift the helmet carefully, cradling it like a bowl of water. Its surface mirrors your face, tired, calm, a little older than you remember being this morning. The air smells faintly of charcoal and boiled rice, carried from the kitchen fires. Someone laughs in the distance, and another scolds them for being too loud. The night shift is about to begin, and though it's not your turn, you walk toward the wall anyway. The path up to the rampart is steep and narrow, lined with flickering torches that hum quietly in the wind. From the top, the view stretches across the valley, a patchwork of fields turned silver by the rising moon. You can hear the crickets, already tuning themselves for the night's performance. Below, the moat glints faintly, and beyond it, the dark line of trees marks the edge of the known world. You lean against the wooden railing and exhale. The armor on your shoulders creaks softly in response. For a long while, you simply stand there, doing nothing, and it feels like the most necessary thing you could possibly do. You think about the men stationed on those distant watchtowers. Some are probably humming to themselves to stay awake. Others might be counting stars or whispering quiet prayers. It's funny, you realize, how even the fiercest warrior becomes a poet when the night grows still enough. Historians still argue Whether samurai truly meditated before battle, or if the stories of calm composure were just myths told to romanticize them. But as you stand here, breathing in the night air, you know the answer doesn't matter. Whatever meditation truly is, it's this: the quiet moment between tension and release, blatant rest, thought and silence. A soft footstep behind you makes you turn. It's the commander again, his expression unreadable in the half-light. "You're off duty," he says. "And yet here you are." "I couldn't sleep," you admit. He joins you at the railing, his hands clasped behind his back. Together, you watch the faint clouds drift across the moon. "Sleep," he says after a while, "is a warrior's first battle. Few ever win it easily." You chuckle, and yet no one ever writes songs about that victory. He smiles faintly, eyes still on the horizon. Maybe they should. There's a long pause between you. Not awkward, just human. Two men surrounded by centuries of noise, stealing one rare slice of stillness. "Do you ever think," you ask quietly, "that the polishing, the drills, the endless waiting, it's all meant to teach patience more than skill?" He nods slowly. "Every war ends. The polishing never does." His answer lingers in the air long after he's gone. You stay there until the moon climbs higher, thinking about that, about the endlessness of maintenance, of effort. It's not glamorous, but maybe that's the point. A sword polished is a mind polished. You return to your quarters sometime after midnight. The barracks are silent now, save for the occasional creak of timber or the sigh of a man dreaming fitfully. You move quietly, setting your helmet back onto its wooden stand. The surface gleams faintly in the candlelight, clean, flawless, almost proud. You sit cross-legged before it and blow out the candle, letting your eyes adjust to the darkness. The outline of the helmet remains, a faint silhouette against the dim moonlight leaking through the window. It looks almost alive, like a guardian spirit keeping watch. In the quiet, your thoughts drift. You imagine the day when someone else, maybe that clumsy recruit from the yard, will sit where you are now, doing this same ritual, oiling the same joints, repeating the same motions. Will he think of you? Probably not. But perhaps he'll feel the same small peace you do now, that satisfaction of seeing something shine after your care. You stretch out on your mat, armor padding under your head, and stare up at the dark ceiling. You count the faint lines in the wood, tracing them like constellations. Somewhere outside, a night heron croaks from the moat, a low, awkward sound that somehow fits the mood perfectly. You smile to yourself. "Even the herons are practicing tonight," you whisper. Then you close your eyes. Sleep doesn't come quickly, it rarely does, but you're not fighting it anymore. You let your mind wander through the day's small rituals, the scent of camellia oil, the scrape of cloth, the glint of gold lacquer catching candlelight. Each image softens a little more, dissolving into something slower, deeper, safer. By the time the first rooster calls somewhere beyond the castle walls, you're halfway between dream and waking. You think hazily that if someone asked you what it meant to live as a samurai, you'd tell them this: it's not about fighting bravely. It's about caring endlessly. You drift off with that thought, your final act of the day not being a battle stance, but an exhale. The helmet gleams softly in the moonlight beside you, waiting patiently for morning. Morning slips in quietly, like a servant afraid to disturb. The first light touches the barracks roof, then slides along the floorboards, painting thin gold lines across your sleeping mat. You wake not with a start, but with a slow, instinctive breath, the kind that says your body already knows it's time. For a few heartbeats, you lie still, listening. The castle is in that in-between hour when the world is half asleep. Somewhere, a rooster crows again. A bucket clatters in the courtyard. A monk chants softly from the temple nearby, his voice low and steady as if it, too, were still stretching awake. You rise, stretch your shoulders, and glance toward the armor stand. The helmet gleams faintly in the dawn light, loyal, patient, as if it never slept at all. You smile at it. You almost want to bow. Outside, the air is cool and sharp, scented with pine resin and smoke from the early kitchen fires. The sky above the castle walls is the pale blue of unpolished steel. You walk toward the well with your washcloth, passing a few retainers who nod sleepily in greeting. One of them mutters something about sore legs. Another yawns so wide his jaw cracks. You splash cold water onto your face, gasping quietly at the shock. It wakes you faster than any commander's shout. The droplets run down your neck, slipping under the collar of your robe. You wipe your face, then look down at the water surface in the bucket. It mirrors your reflection, rippling slightly. You notice how much older you look than you feel. Not bad, you mumble to yourself, half smiling. Still standing. You return to your quarters, roll your shoulders once, and begin dressing in the undergarments and padding that go beneath the armor. The fabric smells faintly of sun-dried straw and oil. Clean, familiar. Each layer fits perfectly, shaped by routine. The motions are automatic now, like a form of morning meditation. As you reach for the helmet, you pause for a moment. The smooth, lacquered surface catches the light again. You tilt it slightly, watching the reflection shift. It's beautiful, absurdly so, for something meant to withstand arrows. You lift it and inspect the crest engraved along the rim. The emblem of your clan, simple yet proud. 3 oak leaves bound by a circle. You run your thumb across the edges. Somewhere in the lacquer, your own fingerprints from yesterday are sealed forever. Invisible, but permanent. When you finally put the helmet on, it feels like closing a chapter. The weight settles onto your shoulders, familiar and grounding. You breathe through it, as always. The morning duties begin soon after. You join the men in the yard again. Formation drills, short sprints, bow practice. The rhythm of shouts, the snap of the bowstring, the sound of sandals scuffing dirt, all merge into a steady percussion that the castle seems to hum along with. Your form's improving, the commander notes as he passes by, his tone neutral but approving. You bow slightly. My knees disagree, sir. He chuckles under his breath, rare but real. That means you're doing it right. As the morning wears on, clouds drift lazily across the sun. The light softens, and a few stray leaves from the nearby chestnut trees spin down into the yard. You catch one absently, twirling it between your fingers before letting it go again. The men are finishing their sets now, panting, sweat beading across their brows. Break time, someone calls. You step aside, leaning against the fence, and sip from your water gourd. The liquid tastes faintly of bamboo. Across the yard, the young recruit, the same boy you helped earlier, waves shyly at you, holding up his sword in triumph. He's managed a proper swing this time, smooth and centered. You raise your cup in acknowledgement. "Keep that up," you say, loud enough for him to hear. He grins, pride flickering in his eyes. Moments like that, small, fleeting, remind you why the discipline matters. Not for glory, not for war, but for the quiet confidence it builds in men who might otherwise never believe they could be graceful. When the bell rings for midday meal, you return once more to the dining hall. The smell of barley, grilled fish, and miso fills the air. You sit among the others, the din of clattering bowls and laughter rising around you. Someone tells a joke about a horse that refuses to charge unless fed sweet rice cakes. Another swears he saw a ghost near the stables last night. You add deadpan, "If it was polishing armor, it was probably me." They laugh, loud and genuine. The young recruit nearly spills his tea. It's strange, you think, how laughter in a place like this feels sharper, as though each man knows how fragile the moment is. After lunch, you step outside again. The sun hangs high now, and the castle's shadows grow crisp along the ground. Somewhere, a temple bell rings in the distance, deep, resonant, endlessly patient. You close your eyes and let the sound settle through you. In that stillness, you think about how much of a samurai's life happens in silence. The polishing, the bowing, the waiting, the breathing. Even battle, when it comes, lasts only minutes, yet it's the waiting that fills years. Historians still argue whether the samurai truly found peace in that waiting, or if they simply disguised restlessness as discipline. Maybe both are true. You've felt both, often in the same breath. You return to your quarters before evening. The helmet, as always, greets you with that calm, unblinking gleam. You set it before you once more, and, without even thinking, reach for the cloth and oil. The ritual begins again. Rub, wipe, shine, breathe. Outside, the wind rustles through the pines, and the light from your lantern pools softly around you. You hum under your breath, not quite a song, more like a rhythm your hands understand. And as you polish, you realize that the world could end outside these walls. Empires rise, fall, crumble, but this moment would remain the same. The sound of cloth on steel, the smell of oil and lacquer, the small satisfaction of watching light return to something dull. You pause, holding the helmet up one last time. Your reflection stares back, a little older, a little wiser, but still polishing, always polishing. You laugh quietly to yourself. You win again, old friend. And in that laughter, the day feels complete. By the time twilight returns, the castle has turned soft at the edges. The walls that looked fierce and commanding in daylight now glow faintly orange in the fading sun. You're seated on the veranda outside your quarters, armor still spread neatly before you. The oil jar sits open beside you, and the scent of it blends with the evening air. Half wildflower, half iron. You rest your hands in your lap for a moment, feeling their soreness. The skin along your palms has toughened over the years, yet there's still a certain tenderness there, the kind that never quite goes away. It's a reminder that mastery always asks for a bit of vulnerability. A pair of swallows dart under the eaves, chirping, tracing quick arcs through the air. You follow them with your eyes until they vanish into the deepening blue. Somewhere behind you, the kitchen staff begins their nightly chatter, pots clanging softly as rice steams and broth simmers. The sound is comforting, domestic, human. You lift the helmet once more. The light catches on its curve, and you can see the faint reflection of the evening sky rippling across the lacquer. You think about the helmet's first owner, some long-dead ancestor whose name has faded from the clan scrolls. Perhaps he too sat here once, doing the same work under a sky that smelled just as sweet. The thought makes you oddly content. It means the ritual is larger than you, an inheritance passed hand to hand, cloth to steel, breath to silence. You reach for a fresh rag and begin again. The cloth slides over the helmet's surface with that small, satisfying sound. Shh, shh, like an ocean receding from sand. The rhythm steadies your pulse. It's not about cleanliness now. It's about continuity. You're reminding the helmet that it's still loved. As you polish, you think about how the samurai's life isn't defined by battles, but by these in-between moments, the tending, the care, the devotion to small, perfect acts. People often imagine glory in the clashing of swords, but the truth is quieter. It lives here, in the patient repetition that no one sings about. Historians still argue whether samurai considered polishing armor an act of spiritual practice or simply discipline. But you've long since stopped separating the two. Every careful motion feels like a prayer. Every breath a soft chant to order in a chaotic world. You pause, resting your elbow on your knee, the cloth hanging loosely in your hand. The sun is gone now, replaced by a soft indigo twilight. Fireflies begin to blink in the garden below, their lights coming and going like quiet thoughts. You can hear the younger retainers somewhere near the stables, talking in hushed tones. Their laughter rises and falls like waves, bursts of energy that remind you how youth always thinks it will last forever. You smile, not unkindly. You once sounded the same. The commander passes by on his evening rounds, nodding as he sees you. Still polishing? You bow lightly, smiling. Still breathing. He chuckles. That's all I ask. When he's gone, you return your gaze to the courtyard. The lanterns are being lit one by one now, their golden circles of light spreading slowly along the pathways. A gentle breeze stirs the pine trees, and you can hear the faint rattle of their needles, like 1,000 tiny whispers. You breathe in deeply, filling your lungs with cool night air. There's a peace here that you can't quite describe, only feel. It sits in your chest, like the memory of a song you once knew but can't recall the words to. The helmet in your lap gleams now, perfect once again. You tilt it slightly, watching how it catches the lantern light, how it seems to hold a small world inside its curve. You can see reflections, your hands, the sky, the faint shape of a moth brushing past the light. You set it gently on the stand. It's done, for tonight at least. Leaning back against the wooden pillar, you close your eyes. The air is cooling fast, brushing against your face, carrying with it the faint scent of cedar and charcoal. You think of all the lives that came before yours, the ones who polished, the ones who fought, the ones who simply waited. You wonder if they too sat here, feeling both the weight of duty and the strange, fragile joy of existence. Probably. Humans don't change much, only their armor does. You open your eyes again, gaze drifting upward toward the stars. The sky is clear tonight, the constellations sharp and confident. Somewhere out there is the warrior's belt, the farmer's plow, the fisherman's net, names for patterns made by chance. You trace them in your mind, idly wondering what stories future generations will attach to those same stars. Perhaps they'll talk of knights in metal suits or soldiers in flying machines. Perhaps someone will polish something else, a helmet of glass, maybe, or a visor that reflects not the moon, but the lights of distant cities. Whatever the world becomes, you hope they still understand what it means to care for something, to take pride not just in fighting, but in tending. The wind picks up slightly, rustling through the trees. The sound mingles with the far-off rhythm of the river and the faint beating of your own pulse. The moment stretches, timeless, suspended between past and future. You whisper, almost without meaning to, "The armor's ready." And maybe for the first time, you realize, so are you. The morning breaks again, pale and soft, like a curtain drawn back to reveal another chance at the same ritual. You rise before the others, the sky still the color of ash, and the air carrying that chill that hints of autumn's breath. Your armor waits on its stand, catching the faintest suggestion of dawn's first light. You walk toward it slowly, as though approaching an old friend. Your knees crack, your shoulders pop, a reminder the time is a polite but relentless teacher. You kneel, open the lacquered chest, and begin reassembling what you've tended for so long. Piece by piece, it comes together. The sword, the shoulder guards, slide into place, smooth and obedient. The do, the cuirass, clicks shut with a deep final sound. And finally, the kabuto, the helmet, gleams like the rising sun itself. Polished so well you can see the faint reflection of your own weary smile. You don't speak. You just breathe, deeply, deliberately, as the world around you wakes. The temple bells ring somewhere down the hill. Birds answer. The smell of rice porridge drifts from the kitchens, faint and comforting. For the samurai, morning isn't the beginning of the day. It's the renewal of discipline. It's where yesterday's doubts dissolve and today's resolve begins. And for you, here, in this quiet courtyard, it's the moment where habit becomes meaning. You run your thumb over the smooth ridge of the helmet and remember the hundreds of mornings like this that came before. Every day the same yet somehow different, a rhythm older than memory itself. Historians still argue whether these routines were meditative or merely obsessive. But when you live inside one, the difference doesn't matter. What matters is that it keeps you still, keeps you sane. You fasten the helmet under your chin and tilt your head, letting the weight settle onto your shoulders. It feels good, not heavy, not light, just right. It's an honest burden, one that tells you who you are. The door slides open behind you. It's your young apprentice again, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, hair sticking out in all directions like the bristles of a worn brush. "Master," he mumbles, "you polished the helmet again?" You nod. "Always." He frowns. "But it was already shining yesterday." You smile, pulling on your gloves. That's the point. He doesn't understand, not yet, but he will. Everyone eventually learns that the act isn't about the result. It's about the quiet hours between. The oil on the fingers, the slow breath, the reflection of light that reminds you the world still holds beauty, even in steel. Outside, the rest of the warriors gather. Armor plates click and clatter. Voices murmur low. The air hums with energy, but also calm. It's not the thrill of bloodlust. It's the poise of people who know that every detail, even the invisible ones, matters. You join them, helmet gleaming, and as you take your place in the formation, the sunlight finally breaks over the hilltop. It catches your helmet first, then spreads across the line of men like liquid gold, turning the entire column into a river of reflected fire. Somewhere deep inside, you feel the quiet satisfaction that no historian can truly describe. The peace that comes from doing something the right way, for no one but yourself. And as you wait for the signal to move, a thought crosses your mind. Maybe polishing the helmet wasn't about preparing for battle at all. Maybe it was about polishing you. The commander gives the order. Drums sound. The gates open with a slow, deep groan, and you march forward into the light. Each step echoes with 1,000 others, those of your ancestors and those yet unborn. Each gleam of your helmet is a message to time itself, that care, patience, and quiet dignity outlast everything. The road stretches ahead, and you move into it. Steady, calm, gleaming like the morning star. The march fades now. The drums quiet. The light dims. You're no longer walking through a battlefield, but through the soft corridors of sleep. The armor is lighter here, almost transparent. The weight on your shoulders melts away, leaving only a memory of effort, of calm, of breath. You find yourself back in the courtyard once more, kneeling beside the helmet. Its surface glows faintly in the lantern light. You reach out one last time and run your fingers along the rim, tracing the cool curve. The sound of night returns, crickets in the grass, the gentle swish of wind over bamboo, the distant echo of temple bells marking another hour. Everything slows. Everything softens. Your breath deepens. Your muscles loosen. Even the world itself seems to exhale with you. You realize that all along, the story wasn't about warriors or weapons, or even history. It was about stillness, about how repetition can become peace, and how small acts of care can polish more than steel. They polish the soul. So as you close your eyes, imagine the faint reflection of your own light shining back from that helmet, calm and eternal. The night wraps around you like silk. The sound fades, leaving only the hum of quiet air. You're safe. You're still. You've done enough for today. Sleep well, warrior. End of script. Sweet dreams.